Thanks to everybody for attending the meeting of the Planning Committee on the 15th of October 2024. I'm Councillor June Molyneux, Chair of the committee. My Vice Chair's not well. Please note the meeting's being streamed live on YouTube. If you're in attendance as a member of the public who's registered to speak, please note you'll have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should finish, or if you're in the middle of a point, wind up within a few seconds. Otherwise, your microphone will be muted. To assist in following the evening's proceedings, a pack's been prepared and is available online. It contains each item's report, plans and presentation slides. After officers have presented the report and speakers have made their representations, I'll invite members to make comments. When you want to speak, please raise your hand, and when invited to speak, please remember to use your microphone and reference the paragraph and page number, which will allow everyone to follow. Please keep in mind that some people require closed captions and or lip reading to follow the proceedings. So if you speak slowly and clearly and try to keep your hands away from your face, please. Please, can everyone ensure the phones are turned to silent? We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarms sound, please exit the way you came in. And with that, I'll move on to the item. Apologies. I've had apologies received from Councillor Hilton, and Councillor Ainsworth is substituting for that. Okay, item 1, declarations of any interests. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in matters contained in the agenda. If you have such an interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you would leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. But you do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision. So, no pecuniary interest. Item 2, the minutes of the meeting of the 10th of September, pages 3 to 4 in your pack. Could somebody move those minutes, please? Thank you. Seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Done it again. That's great. Item 3, planning applications to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for the planning applications are as follows. Officers will summarise the report and registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order. Objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I may grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings, and can you ensure that all your phones are turned to silent, please? And just for members, we've got quite a full agenda tonight. So when you're making any points, can we be quite succinct? And can we try not to duplicate the same thing to be said about 6 times? If people have already made that point, then can we move on? Because we have a lot to get through. Okay, with that, we go on to item 3A. Rotherham Top Farmhouses, Whitley Woods, pages 5 to 54, with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item. With the recommendation that full planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I have one registered speaker, the agent, Sophie Marshall. So, Adele, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Members will recall that this application was deferred at committee last month to enable members to visit the site and see it in context and the relationship with existing dwellings, and the site visit took place last week. In order to assist members understand the development, we've included within the presentation an annotated plan that shows the separation distances, because we were mindful that members were concerned about those, so I hope that's helpful. I can confirm that 11 representations have been received from the occupiers of neighbouring properties, objecting to the proposal on grounds of traffic and highway safety, noise and amenity, ecological damage and potential impacts on the listed building that's nearby. There are no outstanding objections to the scheme from any of the technical consultees. And as detailed in the report, it is considered that the proposal would not adversely affect neighbouring residential amenity and would provide acceptable living accommodation for the future occupiers of the proposed development. It's considered that the proposed development is well designed and would not be harmful to the character and appearance of the area either. Access to the proposed dwellings, apart from to plot 8, would be via an existing access point from the existing 20 mile per hour estate road, and LCC Highways have confirmed that they do not have any objections to the proposed development from a highway safety perspective. There is also an existing vehicular access from Preston Road to Rotherham Top Farmhouse, which runs between the petrol filling station and number 67 Preston Road. And representations have been received raising concerns that this would enable the development to be used as a means of gaining access to Preston Road and effectively create a rat run. However, the access leads directly to Rotherham Top Farmhouse only, which is not part of the application site. And in order to gain entry to the access, vehicles would have to pass through the private amenity space of this property. It is accepted that currently there are no boundary treatments between the farmhouse and the application site that would serve as a deterrent for this. However, the provision of appropriate boundary treatments are recommended to be secured by condition. You'll note from the report that it's recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions and a legal agreement as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sophie, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. The applicant has listened carefully to the comments made at last month's committee. The proposed density meets the council's requirements and also that of the surrounding developments. Separation distances were previously discussed, and we confirm that only plot 2 does not meet the guide. However, the only window on the affected elevation is obscure, and this will be conditioned. The entrance area to the site is adopted highway. This acts as a turning head for Lee Road at the moment. Radius and road widths can get confused, and the access has a 5.5 metre and 6 metre radius, which is as expected for a 4.5 metre wide carriageway. The access is therefore not substandard. In response to the construction and traffic concerns, the applicant has since submitted a construction management plan, including limiting delivery times to between 9:30 and 3:30. We confirm that none of the houses will be accessed off the A6. There is already a turning head for bin wagons. All bin storage will be on site apart from plot 8, which will be off Lees Road. The bins will be collected at the front of each of the properties. A prelim bat roost assessment was undertaken in September 2023, which identified low bat roosting potential. Therefore, a nocturnal emergence survey was carried out, and no bat activity was recorded, and no roosts were identified. The proposed development will be subject to an invasive species eradication plan. Individual trees to be removed are low quality and not subject to TPOs. Collectively, they have some amenity value. Therefore, both parties' tree consultants agreed 11 replacement trees will mitigate their loss and result in long-term improvements. To clarify, the drainage runoff rate will be less than it is for the existing development. The drainage scheme needs to account for a 1 in 100 flood event plus a 40% addition for climate change. This can be achieved by a condition resulting in significant improvements to on-site surface water management. The required planning contributions are set by the council, and the sums for small development sites are intended to be pooled to go towards off-site play facilities. The developer has worked closely with Growth Lancashire and the Council on Heritage, which has resulted in amendments to the scheme, scaling down the overall size of the development from the original submission. Accordingly, the applicant has responded positively to consultee responses, resulting in a policy-compliant scheme that will deliver much-needed family houses in the borough. The site is very important to the developer and their employees, and approval will ensure continuity of employment for the developer's construction workers. We therefore respectfully request that the application is approved this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, over to you, members. Anybody out there? Oh, they've all put their hands up at once. Councillor Marwood, Councillor Southern.
I should have waited.
Councillor Whittam.
As I called for the site visit, I suppose I should start. I went there expecting, from what had been said at that last committee meeting, a very tight, confined site that was trying to squash in these 6 houses and would overlook all the other houses that were already there. And I was quite surprised that it's a large site which in fact is looking very tired and was pretty dilapidated, but there was no problem, I thought, in fitting 6 houses in there, given what is already there. So once all the dilapidated buildings and so forth were taken away, I thought there would be no problem. I really feel that there would be no detrimental effect on the area. In fact, it would be a vast improvement, that bit. And certainly there is plenty of access there, and in no way can they get up to the A6. It's a gated private road, so it wouldn't and shouldn't become a rat run in any way. So I'm happy to propose acceptance of the officer's report.
Thank you. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, when this came back before us last month, my concern initially was the lack of drainage plan, but that's been attended to. On that basis, and from what else I've read, I would recommend we accept the officer's recommendation to pass this. Thank you.
Councillor Whittam.
Thank you, Chair. I also went on a site visit, and a couple of things I picked up on with regard to the rat run. There are some electronic gates there in front of the Rotherham Top farmhouse towards the A6. So whether they work or not, I don't think a rat run is a feasible suggestion from the complainants. But the other thing, there was a veteran yew tree on site there. I hope that will be preserved. It's, as you look at the map, it's near where plot 8 would be.
We're just trying to locate it. Okay.
Yeah, that tree is identified to be protected and retained throughout the development.
Okay, thanks for that. And other than that, I would also go along with the officer's recommendation for the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? If not, I'll move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve the application subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement.
Thank you. If anybody's just come for that item and they wish to leave, please feel free. Good evening, everybody, again. I'll do my little spiel for you then, because the others have just come in. For the benefit of the public here tonight, speaking arrangements for the planning application as follows. Officers will summarise the report and registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order. Objector, supporter, parish town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers against an application, as chair, I may grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I'd respectfully ask members of the public who've not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings, and can you make sure all your phones are switched to silent, please? And if the fire alarm goes off, can you go out the same way that it came in, please? With that, we're on to item 3B. Let me turn over onto the right page again. Hutt Lane, East Charnock, pages 45 to 78 with an update on your addendum, including some conditions. Ian's going to present this item. The officer recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to conditions, and I have 3 registered speakers. Supporter Jason Smalley, the ward councillor Alistair Bradley, and the applicant Patty Linfoot. Ian, can you present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks permanent consent for the use of land as a residential gypsy and traveller site, with the siting of up to 7 caravans, of which no more than 3 can be mobile homes, and the retention of the utility block and site entrance. The application site is located in the Greenbelt and has an extensive planning history since the initial unauthorised use of the land in 2009. Culminating in temporary consents being granted for the use of the land as a residential gypsy and traveller site in 2013, 2015, 2018 and 2021. Traveller sites, whether temporary or permanent, are inappropriate developments in the Greenbelt. However, on each previous occasion, it was considered that very special circumstances could be demonstrated on the basis of the circumstances of the occupiers and planned delivery of a gypsy and traveller site that would overcome the harm to the Greenbelt to the extent that temporary planning permissions could be justified. A gypsy and traveller site at Cowling Farm was allocated in the Chorley local plan that was adopted in 2015. The prospects of the allocated site and its anticipated delivery was considered to justify the grant of temporary consents in 2015 and 2018. However, the site was not delivered, resulting in a further application seeking permanent consent for the use of the land as a residential gypsy and traveller site being submitted in 2021. Chorley Council's Director for Commercial Services confirmed the intention of the council to deliver the gypsy and traveller site at Cowling Farm at that time, and set out a confirmed timescale for its delivery from an application to planning permission through to the delivery of the development on the site. On the basis of this timescale, it was considered that a further temporary consent could be justified and was subsequently granted. It remains that no progress has been made on the Cowling Farm site, and therefore the situation is unchanged, with no alternative accommodation available within the borough for the family that has become settled at the Hutt Lane site following 15 years of occupation. All those residents at the site have been identified as in need of accommodation within Chorley in the Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment 2022. It's therefore considered that the circumstances of the occupiers as a settled Gypsy and Traveller group at the Hutt Lane site, the identified need for Gypsy and Traveller pitches in Chorley, of which the occupiers form part of, and the lack of any alternative Gypsy and Traveller provision in the borough carries significant weight, such that it amounts to the very special circumstances that on balance outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt and other harm to which substantial weight must be attached. All issues are covered in detail in the committee report and on the addendum, and it's recommended that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out on the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Have I got Jason, please? Okay.
Lived on Hutt Lane for almost 50 years. Our property is just up the lane from Heath Paddock. They are our next door but one neighbours. I've known the land as a storage site for materials and plant machinery for the M61 construction, which included a bricks and mortar depot building. I've seen it as a hard standing car park for Heath Charnock Hospital. and as a site to store agricultural and industrial materials. As you know, the site is hidden between the motorway and the motorway bridge and is surrounded by a woodland shelter belt that negates any issues of harm to the openness or visual amenity. The recent inspired tree planting by Chorley Borough Council to the east of the site further helps this. This positioning also ensures there's no chance or indeed no desire to expand and contribute to urban sprawl. As no other solution has been forthcoming, surely now it's time to see the sense in granting permanent permission for the families at Heath Paddock. Now is not the time for tame language. We need a solution. It's been long enough, I'm sure you'll agree. And the solution to your need to provide a place for the gypsy and traveller community in Chorley Borough, in line with the requirements of the local plan, can be resolved tonight by enabling this family to call Heath Paddock home and to live their lives in a manner that honours their Romany cultural heritage. Mike Linfoot and his family have proved to be good neighbours over the past 15 years, embracing as friends all who would accept them. Just a few days ago, Mike was helping a resident of Old Stoney's Court search for a missing pet. The family have complied with every request from Chorley Borough Council during this time and have been supportive in the efforts to find a permanent solution for them. However, after 15 years, they are still living under the dark shadow of a possible eviction from their homes, a situation which has caused them a good deal of stress and anxiety. Despite this, they've managed to raise their children to become fine, outstanding, hard-working adults in this time, young folk who, along with their parents, contribute so much to the local and the wider community. As I drove here this evening, I saw the writing on the wall of the interchange, a place where everyone matters. Please don't let the words diversity and inclusion ring through these hallowed halls as nothing more than a hollow promise. Our dear councillors, it's time to step up with courage, compassion and dignity and let this family and their elders, as they enter the twilight years, call this place their home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak, obviously I'm here as a ward councillor alongside Councillor Murray. We are speaking in support of residents who have contacted us and asked us to do that. The first part is, Madam Chair, is a statement on behalf of residents, which I will read out and then I'll put my own comments after that. So we've been asked to speak on behalf of those local residents who remain steadfastly opposed to the continued occupation of this Greenbelt site. Residents under point 1 believe that determining this application should actually be deferred. The requirement is that agenda papers, including reports, should be made available to the public at least 5 working days before the meeting. Publication of the report was late by 1 day, and even then excluded the proposed planning conditions, which are particularly important in this case, as affected local residents need the opportunity to consider and comment on them. Residents therefore request that this item is deferred to a future meeting where all parties have time to properly consider the facts. Point 2, refusal of the application. Notwithstanding the earlier comments regarding a deferral of the decision, if Planning Committee decide to continue with considering this application this evening, residents would ask that they consider the following. The officer's report makes it very clear that the council has failed over many years to deliver the allocated traveller site as part of the mixed residential development at Cowling Farm. Granting consent, as proposed in the report, will benefit the council by allowing its remaining land to be developed for housing to the council's financial benefit. Its decision on the application, if made on the basis of the current report, would therefore be contaminated by this pecuniary interest. The application must therefore have independent assessment to ensure probity in the decision making. The weight given in the officer's report to the site being for the wider Linfoot family is badly undermined by the statement in the application submission that the occupiers of the site should not be restricted by condition. This means that the site could in the future be sold or leased to non-related occupiers, and the basis of that special circumstances relied on to overcome the Greenbelt restriction would be lost. As a result, the very special circumstances essential for an appropriate development in the Greenbelt have not been demonstrated. If, despite all of these shortcomings, the Planning Committee follow the recommendation, it would, in the opinion of our residents, represent an unprecedented betrayal of the overwhelming majority of local residents by the Council, this committee, who have consistently and unequivocally previously promised to return Hutt Lane to its former wild state and deliver an alternative solution, identified following a rigorous inspectorate-led site review process in 2015. For all of the above reasons, residents believe that this application should be refused. As I said, that's a statement of the residents in the area who have asked us to speak on their behalf. In terms of my own comments on the matter alongside ward colleagues, I think members will see that as residents state and is detailed in the report, and we've already heard, this goes back 15 years to 2009. The site is Greenbelt land, as detailed in paragraph 23 of your report. It was subject to an invasion in contravention of that Greenbelt status, as identified in paragraph 24. Permission was refused by this very committee, as it details in paragraph 25, and that was supported by an inspector previously in paragraphs 26 and 27. The next sections of the report detail a long history of reasons for refusal of permanent permission. So what has changed? Nothing has changed. The situation is still the same. It is still Greenbelt land. There is still no good reason for permission to be granted. If approved, this would drive a coach and horses through the planning system. So where's next? Where in this borough is safe if this gets passed? Residents argue that this does cause harm to the Greenbelt. There is not sufficient special circumstances now to outweigh that harm, and therefore this committee has no option but to refuse this application and support the planning system in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Patty, would you like to speak now?
Dear members, I am Patty Linfoot, part of the travelling community. Firstly, I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak this evening and for the recommendation of a permanent permission. Our site is in the Greenbelt but is not open countryside, which lies between a small housing estate, the M61 and some cottages on Ut Lane. For over 15 years we have been trying to provide a safe place to live for our family, including my elderly parents now in their 80s, and for our sons and their future wives and grandchildren. Our sons, nieces and nephews were infants when we arrived. They are now young men and women. Residents argue that the need is not significant now they are older, but we feel this is as much of a need as ever, as this secures their future and they don't have to go through what we have. On each application we have been given a series of temporary positions, 5 in total, each time saying Cowling Farm would be available. This has not proved viable and would have been a great cost to the council and taxpayers. Cowling Farm was never going to happen, which we stated on many occasions. Our site comes with no cost to anyone and is available to meet Chorley's identified need with the granting of permission. Contrary to belief, we are council taxpayers and have been since day one. Gypsy and travellers face much opposition with stereotyping, and over the years we have overcome a lot of this, and the supporting evidence clearly shows. Councils do not provide enough sites, and this leads to private sites causing much opposition. Despite some opposing residents, we have integrated into the community and have overcome a lot of this opposition. We have had to overcome the uncertainty, racism and stress over the years, with certain residents making it their life's work to stop us getting permission. I'd also like to add, that's not on my paper, that there is a lot of residents from Ut Lane and the surrounding area here tonight, and Alistair Bradley doesn't speak for all of them. I would also just like to add that. But I feel now this is the opportunity for Chorley to recognise finally that gypsies are part of the community. Hear, hear. We just want a normal life for our family and somewhere decent to live. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you. Now, do you want to come back on anything? Yes. Adele just wants to come back on something.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Before members debate the application, there's just one issue that I just want to clarify for you that's been raised, and that is following the request for a deferment on the basis of the publication of the agenda and the accompanying reports, and to give you comfort that the publication of the agenda is legally compliant. There's a requirement for the agenda and the items to be considered to be published 5 clear working days before the meeting, and the agenda was published on Monday the 9th of October. It's not unusual for reports to follow as they're being finalised and signed off, and the reports were published again on Wednesday. With regard to the conditions, they were circulated again, not unusually to members, on the addendum earlier on this afternoon, and you will note that there's not a particularly long list of suggested conditions, and I think members have had the opportunity for early afternoon and late afternoon to consider those, and they are, as I say, contained in the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, right, over to you, members. Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Chair. I feel this has gone on long enough, Chair. 15 years is a long time for a community that has been established now in the area. We talk about the green belt. It's not a case of the green belt is there to stop urban areas coming together, and this plot of land doesn't threaten that. The majority of people do support the family remaining, and the council has failed to provide alternative provision. So I've no hesitation in following the recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
I'd like to second the recommendation. The council's failed in its duty to provide travellers accommodation. This has been in front of this committee so many times, as has been eloquently stated. We've granted temporary planning permissions. We've not found a good reason to refuse it. Now's the time to grant. I won't say any more because I think the arguments have been well put by the applicant and Mr. Smalley. Now's the time for us to approve this.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd just like to say what Jean said there in terms of the provision for travellers' sites. I think this is shown there's a definite need for it within with Chorley Borough Council. So that's the first thing that needs to be needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Just one other thing. My understanding is that from reading the information and what's been presented by the officers, is that there's a special set of circumstances surrounding this case, and that either way regarding the decision, there's no precedence to be set. So that I just want to confirm that's my understanding. There's no precedent to be set, and it is a very specific set of circumstances in relation to this case.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, there's no precedent in planning as such. Each case is treated on its individual merits. This case has been treated on the basis of specific circumstances that have occurred in this instance, and if another kind of application came along, then that would have to be assessed on the merits of that particular case in that instance. So it doesn't set a precedent that enables people to use a blueprint or anything like that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. I've studied the application in quite a bit of detail, and obviously the explanation we received earlier in consideration of the spectral circumstances. I'd be happy to go with the Planning Office's recommendation that we pass this. Thank you.
Councillor G.
Thanks, Chair. 15 years ago, I remember this coming to Planning Committee. It seems such a long time ago. Vague recollection of it being quite heated at the time, and how times have changed, how people have changed, thank goodness. And we're sat here now, 15 years later. Chorley Borough have tried to find somewhere, unfortunately not succeeded, and I think it's time to call it a day and not go another 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? If not, I'll move to the vote. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Chair. I did a site visit last week and we had a look at the area. I have to say that I thought the site was very well kept, well maintained, and in keeping with the area. There was nothing that stood out for me. It was very private, respectful to the community, and reading the extra information that with the extra conditions, I feel it's supportable, definitely.
Thank you. Councillor Marwood.
Sorry, Chair.
It's all right. You didn't listen to it, did you?
Not quite as long as Councillor G, but I first was involved with this in 2015. And I've seen it go through all these various temporary permissions. And it was all down to, we will provide you with another site. So, all these years, you're sitting there in what is a very well-kept site, as been said. You've raised your family, hoping that, and they've gone through school, and hoping that when they come back, they haven't been thrown off. But we might get thrown off in 3 years' time. So we'll go for another temporary, and we might get thrown off in another 3 years' time. I can't even begin to imagine the pressure that you're under, trying to keep your family and your business and everything else going with this hanging over your head all the time. It doesn't in any way do anything to deprive the openness of the Greenbelt. And this Greenbelt, I wish we could get rid of the name. People just think, oh, Greenbelt, that's it. It must stay covered in trees, grass, and all the rest of it. No, it doesn't. This is special circumstances. This is a family who've lived, worked, and from what is being said and what I've read, and it's probably the most well-advertised development in Chorley. So to say that, sorry, you didn't quite, you missed it by a day, we didn't know what was going to happen, well, that's been explained. It's a well-hidden site, to be perfectly honest. It's surrounded by trees and so forth. The first time I went to see it was last week. I had to ask somebody to tell me where it was. And I was only 200 yards away from the entrance. If you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't know it was there. At the end of the day, we were promised, and we promised the families, we will find you another site. And the committee at that point, that was their main purpose. We failed, sadly. And it wasn't through lack of effort, I assure you. But it is a far more complicated business to get that Cowling site going than we thought it would be. And as already been said, it doesn't set a precedent. That doesn't work in planning. But there comes a point when you have to say, let's have some common sense now. And I have no hesitation that on balance, the time has come to say, let it go. And that it should support the proposal.
Okay, is that it? Now, can I move to the vote? Really want to get to the vote. Oh, right. So can we move to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve planning permission, subject to conditions.
the new people here tonight. Speaking arrangements are going to for the application as follows. Officers are going to summarise the report. Registered speakers were invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I'll grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings, and could you please all turn your phones to silent? And if there is a fire, if the fire alarm goes off, you leave the same way as we came in. With that, we'll go on to item 3C, land north of Town Lane, Whitley Woods, pages 79 to 156, with an update on your addendum. Adele's going to present this item. The officer recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to a number of conditions which are in your report. I have 3 registered speakers: an objector, Trevor Howarth, the parish town councillor, Peter Hyam, and the agent, Anthony Blackwell. Adele, can you present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This application site forms part of a wider parcel of land that is designated as safeguarding land under the provisions of policy BNE3 of the Chorley Local Plan. Although there is a small section of the site to the southwest that falls within the settlement boundary of Whitley Woods. The site is a large parcel of land of over 17 hectares and is situated between the M61 motorway, which is to the east, and the defined settlement boundary of Whitley Woods, which is to the west. It falls immediately to the north of Town Lane, and there are several public rights of way that run through the site. Members will be aware that there have been 2 previous planning applications on the majority of this site, the first of which was the subject of an appeal by the applicant against non-determination, and the subsequent appeal was actually dismissed by the planning inspector in 2022, principally on highway-related grounds. The applicant overcame the reasons for refusal on the appeal scheme with a revised outline planning application for 250 dwellings, which Planning Committee resolved to grant planning permission for last year. This planning permission is a key material planning consideration in the assessment and determination of this current application that is before members this evening. This current application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 280 dwellings and includes additional land to the east, taking the site boundary up to the M61 motorway. 30% of the proposed dwellings are proposed to be affordable, with a split of 70% in social rent and 30% in shared ownership. Over 50 representations have been received in objection to the proposal, including from Town Lane Residents Association, on grounds including traffic and transportation, lack of local amenities, flood risk and drainage, ecological harm and tree loss. Whilst there have been some detailed objections received from the Parish Council and other individuals on highway and contaminated land grounds, that local highway authority, the Environment Agency and the Council's Waste Services Manager are all satisfied that the scheme is acceptable subject to the imposition of conditions. There are no outstanding objections from any technical consultees. From previous major housing applications that have come before this committee in recent years and their subsequent appeal decisions, members will be well aware of the Council's housing land shortfall and the fact that the tilted balance of paragraph 11D of the framework is engaged and must be applied to the Council's determination of this application. Core Strategy Policy 1 sets out the locations for growth and investment across central Lancashire and identifies Whitley Woods as an urban local service centre where some growth and investment will be encouraged to help meet housing and employment needs. Located on the edge of the settlement, the site is in an accessible and sustainable location within a reasonable walking distance of bus stops, community facilities and shops that would provide for day-to-day needs of residents. The proposed development is considered to be consistent with Policy 1 of the core strategy. That said, whilst Policy 1 in itself is not out of date, it does form part of a strategy which is failing to deliver a sufficient level of housing. As such, the policy should only be afforded moderate weight in the planning balance. The application site is mostly located within land designated as safeguarded land under Policy BNE3, and this is a restraint policy that states that development other than that permissible in the Greenbelt or area of other open countryside will not be permitted on safeguarded land. The proposal is therefore contrary to this policy. However, the policy is out of date and can be afforded only very limited weight in the planning balance. In terms of benefits, the provision of new housing would bring construction and supply chain jobs, places for the economically active to live, increased local spend and a greater choice in the local market. These benefits have not been quantified and would apply to any housing development of this scale, but are still considerable. The scheme will deliver a policy-compliant level of affordable homes to the area, of which there is a significant shortfall across the borough. The new affordable dwellings would provide homes for real people in real need at this time. The proposal would boost the supply of housing in a situation where there is no 5-year housing land supply and an under-provision of affordable housing, and as a result, moderate weight can be given to the economic and significant weight to the social benefits that the proposal would deliver. It is not considered that the adverse impacts of the proposed development relating to the conflict with policy BNE3 of the local plan would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the economic and social benefits that the scheme would deliver, and the proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement, as is detailed in the main report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Trevor, do you want to...
The permission previously granted by the Planning Committee is flawed for a number of reasons. The land which comprises the former tennis courts, paddock and field attached to Brantwood was held by Mr Irving Wright, the former owner of Brantwood, and I bought the property in 2000 when Mr Wright was in prison, serving a sentence for threatening his wife and a lover with a firearm. The parcel of land just described was later claimed to be held in a separate company bat out of hell by Mr Wright and his wife. The land is not registered, and at the time I purchased the property, it had been repossessed by the bank. It is now understood Mr Wright unlawfully hived off this land without any authority, hence why the land is never registered. Therefore, in short, Mr Wright does not have lawful title to the land to sell the same to Redrow. Mr Wright has never been near the land for the past 25 years, nor has he arranged for the land to be maintained. In 2014, Mr Wright offered to sell me the land for £500,000. I then instructed solicitors when it was revealed that Mr Wright did not have title to the land. One would have expected Redrow and the council to have made the necessary checks. Secondly, the local authority have a duty to notify all affected persons of the planning committee meeting. At the time the application was granted, I received no notification of any planning meeting, nor did a large number of residents within the area. In respect to the meeting this evening, I only became aware by email. When I spoke to several elderly people on Town Lane, they were totally unaware of this meeting. In fact, on Sunday last, one neighbour even understood the application had been deferred for 5 years. This is not exercising a democratic process, but in short, conducting a planning decision in a clandestine manner. The Planning Committee website says members of the public are invited to speak publicly at the Planning Committee. The Chairman invites statements and comments. The Council failed to invite affected persons to the application when it was first decided. The amendment to the planning application, the Council obviously decided to notify some of the neighbours, but not all of the neighbours. The Planning Committee, which I understand third hand, passed the application by the deciding vote of the Chairman, made such a decision on land which is not registered and title is disputed. The Council failed to notify persons affected by the application of the planning meeting. This is a judicial and democratic process which, having decided to go against the planning inspector's decision on the previous application, made this decision in circumstances which I submit are unlawful. If the committee was not on notice before, it is now, and therefore to proceed and consider what is a planning application that should never have been approved for the reasons I've just set out is itself unlawful. Should the committee this evening decide to continue and determine this application in the face of the issues I've set out, then at the very least the committee should publish its reasons for doing so in order there can be legal challenge. The application, it's clear the committee are not interested in the views of the objectors and prepared to accept traffic monitoring reports that took place during the weeks of COVID and school holidays. The application you are being asked to rubber stamp is a development of 280 homes, which will produce a further at least 560 vehicles, plus the additional Amazon and supermarket vehicles. That's just vehicles, not traffic movements. If following my submission, the committee are still determined to plough on regardless, at the very least I urge the committee to attend Town Lane and Dart Lane and have a site visit. I respectfully urge the committee to refuse the application for the reasons I've set out. In the alternative, to defer your decision whilst matters are further investigated and the committee have undertaken their own site assessment.
I'm Peter High, I'm Whitley Woods Parish Council. Obviously, we are against this application, as we were the previous one, for 250 houses. This site leads on to a country lane that's got problems at both ends. At the east side, you've got a humpback bridge over the canal, and you've got a very bad bend and a very narrow. To the other side, on the west side that goes down to Waterhouse Green, you have a bad bend with very little footpath before it drops down onto Waterhouse Green, which is a single track road because of the parking of the houses around there. So the traffic implications are going to be huge. There are no footpaths, as I've said, on one side of the road, and you've got to cross from the proposed site to the other side of the road on a bad bend. It's not on a bus route, so people are going to have to walk if they don't use the cars. The top water is a concern because of the flooding that regularly happens at Waterhouse Green. It's all very well putting attenuation tanks and all. We've heard all this before. It doesn't work. The water doesn't get to the right place. The relocation of the bus stops at Waterhouse Green is a farce. Nobody's looked at that properly. They're not in the right place. The added complication, of course, is we've got a traveller site across the road. So that will add further complications to the traffic on that road. Whitley Woods Parish Council really have had enough of all this development. We just can't take any more. There's no infrastructure in place. And so it's we say, refuse this application. Let's be sure what you're voting for tonight. You're not voting for the 250 that's already gone, or the extra 30. You're voting for 280 houses, which is a big development. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we got Anthony, please?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak as the applicant for the application. I'd like to thank the planning officer for a very thorough committee report, which has a recommendation that permission is granted subject to the 106 agreement, which would secure, as already stated, 30% affordable housing and financial contributions of somewhere in the region of £722,000. I'd like to also draw your attention to the current planning permission for the majority of the proposed development for the wider site, which has already been discussed and deals with many of these matters. I'm content that the officer's report and the current planning permission will deal with these objections, and I'm sure that they will be debated now. Thank you.
Okay then.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to advise members that a planning decision is a good decision unless it is challenged and successfully done so through judicial review. The previous decisions were not challenged and therefore they are good, sound planning decisions in planning law. In terms of the notification, practice and procedure is that neighbouring occupiers are notified about an application, and when that application comes before planning committee at the point of assessment and decision, we invite people who made contributions to that planning application. And as I said earlier this evening, those invitations to attend planning committee were sent out to all those who contributed. If somebody lives near the site and they didn't contribute, they wouldn't have received that information, and that's in accordance with our normal practices and procedures. I did check, as I always check, with our IT colleagues last week and again today for confirmation that all those letters did get sent, and obviously we have representatives and people who've made contact about the application, so I'm satisfied that the appropriate level of publicity was undertaken in respect of our normal practice and procedures for planning committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adele. Over to you, members. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I use that road, Town Lane, virtually every day. I walk down it on a regular basis. And many a time I've had come close to having accidents either through when I was running or walking, taking my kids down there, and also coming out through certainly Dark Lane. I find it very, very difficult. My car's almost been hit on a number of occasions. I know getting onto both ends, it's very difficult getting out onto the main Blackburn Road. There's been accidents there because people get impatient. So that's currently on the current amount of vehicles that are going down. So whilst they say it's only additional 14 according to the figures, whether you accept the figures or not, I still think it's an additional slimy slicing on top of what's already going to be a hell of a lot of number of cars. And on that basis, I find it very concerning that this development will potentially lead to some accidents down the line. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. One of the claims from the objectors was the legal provenance of the actual land. Can I just confirm if that is or is not a planning consideration?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Essentially, the land ownership is not necessarily something that we will take into account as a local planning authority, and the grant of planning permission doesn't override any third-party interests or rights that exist on land. So where planning permission is granted and an owner is not in a position to sell the land, then the application and the consented scheme cannot be implemented. That's a matter for the development to do their due diligence and make sure that they can appropriately acquire the site if they choose to implement a planning permission.
Who was it? Councillor Marwood.
Thank you, Chair. I just point out that as LCC Highways have looked at this again, and they had no objections when it was 250 houses, and they've no objections that it's 280. And they are the experts, and I appreciate local knowledge is always knows what's going on and the close calls and so on. But LCC are the ones we have to listen to. They have the evidence and they say they have no problem with it.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is one thing that always annoys me. You give, excuse me, you give planning permission for X amount of houses to the developers, and they do it time and time again. They come back for an extra so many houses. They say it's only 20 houses, only 30 houses. But 30 houses is a lot of houses. So it's annoying, and it really riles me at times that it's not just the odd occasion, that they do it all the time. So that's all I'm going to say on that. Thank you.
Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. It's dense. It was dense at 250. It's even more dense at 280. But in line with my colleagues, I've gone through what's been put forward. I've looked at the consultations in there. I can't find anything in there where I could find a reason to object to this application. So on that basis, I'm bound to agree with the planning officer's recommendation that we pass this.
Thanks, Chair. I went on the original site visit, and as I recall, and the officer's report lists a whole range of other development sites like this which were won on appeal, and I think this one was as well, wasn't it?
The background to this site is set out in the report. There was a series of appeals that were lost. This one was, the original scheme was dismissed on a highway ground, but the highway reason for refusal was overcome. So a subsequent application was approved by this planning committee for part of the site.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Well, just in the absence of a second, I'll second Councillor Southern's proposition. Not a great application, not the best place for us to be built, but our hands are tied, unfortunately. So, reluctantly, I support the recommendation.
Okay. Any more comments? If not, I'll move to the vote, as we have a proposal in a second. Okay, move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted to approve the application, subject to conditions.
Okay. If you've come for that application and you wish to leave, please feel free. Jill at Plainfields, East Charnock, pages 157 to 190. Ian's going to present this item. Planning permission granted subject to conditions, and have no registered speakers. Off you go, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. This item is a council application that seeks full planning permission for the removal of the existing changing rooms, garage and a shipping container, and the erection of a new pavilion, refurbishment of the toilet and shower block to provide grounds maintenance, has the potential to engage with the exception to inappropriate development that supports facilities for outdoor sport and recreation. However, this exception is on the proviso that any development must preserve the openness of the green belt and not conflict with the purposes of including land within it. The existing buildings do have an impact on openness. However, the proposed buildings will be materially larger than the ones that they would replace, such that it would be unreasonable to conclude that the proposal would preserve the openness of the green belt. As the development fails to preserve openness, it does not comply with any of the exceptions to inappropriate development in the green belt and is therefore harmful by definition. As the development would result in definitional harm to the green belt, there would have to be very special circumstances to justify the grant of planning permission that would outweigh this harm. The applicant has advanced a number of benefits in support of the development. The benefits are set out in the report and in summary comprise improvements to the appearance of the site, relatively limited impacts on greenbelt openness due to the modest scale of development, positioning and site characteristics. The playing fields themselves will be unaffected, and the facilities would support the ongoing and increased use of public playing fields for the wider community benefit. Whether or not these benefits amount to the very special circumstances necessary to outweigh the harm to the greenbelt is a matter of planning judgment and is for the decision taker to determine. In this instance, it's considered that cumulatively the benefits of the proposal carry significant weight, such that they outweigh the substantial harm to the greenbelt and amount to very special circumstances. It's therefore considered that the proposed development is acceptable in line with the provisions of the framework, whilst all matters of detail are acceptable and are covered in detail in the committee report. It's therefore recommended that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. So it's over to you, members, and I've had Councillor Beach, Councillor Ainsworth and Councillor Morwood. Oh, and Councillor Snow want to speak. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for the croaky voice. I'd like to move a proposal that we accept the officer recommendations. I do think this is an excellent facility. It needs updating, it needs modernising, and given the fact that we also will be achieving 10% net gain in biodiversity, I think we should go ahead with it, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ainsworth.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second Councillor Beach's proposal. Benefit to the area, and what's there now is not beneficial. I think it would improve the whole characteristic of that area as well, having that building.
Thank you. Councillor Morwood.
I withdraw.
Councillor Snow.
This is a long-owned asset of the council. We've not really invested sufficiently in it. It's great to see this coming forward. It'll be a fantastic thing for.
Any more comment? Oh, sorry, I thought you'd finished.
I'm finished.
Any more comments? If not, I'll move to the vote. Okay, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve the application, subject to conditions.
Going to present this item. Recommendation is permit full planning permission and have no registered speakers. Over to you, Adele.
Thank you, Chair. This application site is located within the settlement of Chorley and forms part of the Chorley North Industrial Park on the southern side of Drumhead Road. The wider area contains buildings that are of a similar scale and size, with parking areas and buildings set back from the road and with associated landscaping. The application proposes the erection of a service canopy and alterations to the existing car park. The service canopy is in the form of an extension to the existing building with a pitch roof and open on the northern side. The alterations to the parking area consist of the creation of formal parking spaces, which currently is an open parking area and hard standing area. There are no outstanding objections to the scheme from consultees. The application proposes an extension to an existing storage building for which policy EP3 of the local plan is relevant, and it's considered that the proposal accords with the requirements of this policy. The site is located within an established business park, and given the distance to the nearest residential properties, it's not considered that there would be any harmful impacts on the level of amenity enjoyed by neighbouring occupiers. LCC Highways have not raised any objections regarding the proposal to the existing warehouse and are of the opinion that the development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site, and it is therefore recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Over to you, members. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Chair. Formally moving that we accept officer recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Sherwood, Councillor Ainsworth.
Quite happy to second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, it's been thirded. Any more comments from anybody? If not, I'll go to the vote. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve the application for planning permission, subject to conditions.
Okay. Thank you. And last but not least, item 3F, Jack Green Farm, Brindle, pages 209 to 230 with an update on your addendum, including the recommendation. Ian's going to present this item. Outline planning permission is granted, subject to the conditions. I have one registered speaker, the agent, Robert Harrison. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. This application seeks outline planning permission with all matters reserved for the demolition of existing buildings and erection of 4 dwellings. The application site comprises agricultural buildings at Jack Green Farm and is in the Greenbelt at Brindle. In considering matters of principle, the framework sets out that the development of new buildings in the Greenbelt should be regarded as inappropriate, subject to a number of exceptions.
Sorry?
The site is not previously developed land, and the proposed development does not meet with any of the exceptions to inappropriate development. As such, the proposal is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and is therefore harmful by definition. As the development would result in definitional harm to the Greenbelt, there would have to be very special circumstances to justify the grant of planning permission that would outweigh this harm. The report sets out that there is a fallback position by way of an extant planning permission for the conversion of an agricultural barn into 3 dwellings. The proposed development would take place instead of the previously approved conversion scheme, and although it would result in a larger quantum of development, the current proposal also involves the demolition of a number of unsightly agricultural buildings, all included within the red edge on the application plan. The proposed scheme would reduce the built form across the site, resulting in a visual improvement in comparison with the current appearance of the site, which will be of benefit to the wider character of the area. Whether or not these benefits amount to the very special circumstances necessary to outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt is a matter of planning judgment and is for the decision taker to determine. The fallback position and the visual improvements are factors that are considered to carry significant weight that would amount to the very special circumstances required to overcome the definitional harm to the greenbelt, which must be accorded substantial weight in line with the framework. The proposal is considered to be acceptable in all other respects, and all issues are covered in detail within the committee report. Overall, the benefits of the proposed development are such that on balance it's considered that the application is acceptable in line with the provisions of the framework and the development plan, and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report and on the addendum, and subject to a 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Have I got Robert Harrison, please? Yeah.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. I'm the planning agent, Robert Harrison, on behalf of the applicant, and wish to support the case officer's recommendation presented to you for approval of this outline planning application. Jack Green Farm is a former dairy farm which is subject to an extant planning approval for the creation of 3 dwellings through the change of use of existing buildings. This is the legitimate fallback provision as assessed and reported in the case officer's report. The planning officer is satisfied and has recommended to you that various special circumstances outweighing the harm to the greenbelt have been demonstrated for this development. There should be no concerns that this application would set any form of precedent for the redevelopment of farmyards in Chorley. We must remember there is a legitimate fallback provision of 3 approved dwellings already within the planning unit. There will be a reduction of 64% of built structures in the greenbelt and 45% reduction in built land in the greenbelt as a result of this application. There will also be 0.25 hectares of former built land laid down to grass and or wildflower meadows as part of the development. The Mansell case decision at the Court of Appeal is important. It recognises the presence of an existing residential approval, which is our legitimate fallback, and an alternative residential proposal, which is the outline application, which delivers a better development of the land. The judge in this case recognised the existing approval and the alternative development scheme as material evidence in reaching its judgment. The dwellings which will come forward under this application will result in 4 modern built dwellings incorporating modern building techniques, materials and a sensible site layout, a vast improvement to the fallback position. The Council have conducted a thorough greenbelt assessment and they are satisfied that very special circumstances have been demonstrated outweighing any perceived harm. I would support the case officer's recommendation and ask you to approve this application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Beach.
Formally moving that we accept officer recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
I'd like to second that, but I was going to be a little, if you allow a little bit of facetiousness.
Go on then, seeing as it's, you know.
One of the pictures shows a demolished building with piles of concrete blocks. I'd like to suggest that that be sent to the British Institute for Art to create a sort of a picture that would set in place Chorley's Royal Splendour.
Their latest installation.
That's it, sir. I support the recommendations.
Thank you. Any more comments from anybody? Preferably not facetious. Okay. If not, I'll move to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members have voted unanimously to approve the application for planning permission subject to conditions.
Thank you. No